What if the biggest leverage for your business isn't adding more leads or spending more on ads, but tightening what you already have using data, people, and smart automation? Sonam Ludhani, a revenue operations strategist, shows that you don't need a fortune-level budget to unlock margins. From supply chain to GTM and AI, she's helped companies fix leaks, align their teams, and deploy practical tools that free up time for what really matters. In this episode, we unpack practical revenue operations for entrepreneurs, how to start small, and how to use AI wisely to support rather than replace human judgment. Hello and welcome to Season 10 of the Womenpreneur Asia podcast, and I'm your host, Krista Gun. My mission is to uncover the stories and strategies of Asian women entrepreneurs in Asia to inspire and guide you on your own entrepreneurial journey. This episode is brought to you by Redbox Studio. Today we're sitting down with Sonam Ludhani, who has built a career across Dubai, Singapore, and beyond, now focusing on revenue operations or RevOps and AI strategy to help scale-ups optimize margins. We'll explore practical RevOps, why people before tools matter, and how to avoid AI hype while still harnessing its power. Listen in as we talk about her bold pivot, the power of data, and the human side of technology-driven growth. Hi Sonam, before we get into today's interview, could you let us know where you are right now and your backstory?
So right now I'm in Dubai. I'm primarily based between Dubai, Malaysia, and Singapore. And I've spent about the last decade now helping global companies like Amazon, TONOMUS really scale their commercial organizations. My background really isn't in chasing that top line revenue, but rather on the bottom line where I make sure that every dollar companies earn actually counts. I help them build smarter processes, focusing on plugging revenue leaks and using technology to really give our commercial teams back their time so they can focus on doing what really matters. And something that's really come out strongly across the last 10 years is that you don't need big budgets to do this. Even really small businesses and startups can unlock margin simply by setting up the right sort of systems and processes, aligning their teams in the same direction, and honestly just using affordable tools rather than the shiny new thing on the block. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about how female entrepreneurs across Southeast Asia can think about RevOps in a very practical way, not as something complex or corporate that requires money they don't have, but as a set of strategies that's going to help them optimize.
I wanted to know a little bit about your career journey because it has taken you from supply chain roles at Unilever and Beiersdorf to tech at Amazon and now strategy and AI across Dubai, Singapore, and beyond. Looking back at your journey from supply chain to strategy, I want to know, what's that one decision that you made at that time that felt risky but really ended up shaping your career the most?
I think it was leaving supply chain when I was at the peak of it. I had so much to lose at that point. I knew I was good at it. I knew that I had a promotion coming around the horizon. And it was a very conscious choice to say, look, I don't think this is what I'm passionate about. I know I can do the job, but that can't be what my life is about. I don't want to just do. I want to excel. I want to thrive. And so making that pivot from supply chain within the FMCG world to GTM within tech was a really risky call for me. And I was so fortunate that I had the support and resources and some really good mentors to help guide me so I could do it in a way that made sense.
When you look back on that decision, was it something that you felt that was something that really emboldened you at that time? Like you felt really bold about it?
I think so, yes, because had I spent longer in supply chain, I don't think I would have ever mustered up the courage to leave. I would have had too much to lose. At that point, I had been in supply chain for about 4 to 5 years, and I was enjoying it, yes, but I wasn't waking up excited to do it. Every day was very similar to the day before. I loved my colleagues I worked with. I cared about the product, but a certain part of me always felt that I was doing the role rather than loving it. And looking back, I'm so happy that I made that choice, because during COVID, I really decided to start taking steps toward that. So because things were a lot slower, I decided it's the perfect time to start working on my pivot. I started getting involved in a lot of digital transformation projects at work, things like macros, like building AI models as part of our forecasting, and sort of playing with those models that we already had in our system. And I realized that those were the things that were energizing me. And I want to do an MBA so I can grow my network in this field, because I don't know anyone, and I could find mentors, and it would sort of give me the right resources to move into the space that I wanted to. So I think doing an MBA was genuinely one of the best decisions I've ever made. I did my MBA at London Business School, and I did the first half of it in Dubai. A large part of it was remote because of COVID. And in the second part of it, in the second year, I was going back and forth between London and Dubai quite a bit between our electives. We had a module in San Francisco, and I found that this entire experience was so incredibly shaping for me. I met so many like-minded peers. I remember going to Microsoft in San Francisco and speaking to the global VP of AI and saying, I love what this person does for a living. And I was so honored by the fact that he took the time, even after the sessions, to sort of have multiple calls with me and help guide me as to how I can go ahead and enter the space from where I was. So I think London Business School really opened doors to having those conversations, being able to ask for advice. And I did realize that people are more than willing to help. It's just making sure that you're heard. If they hear you, they generally say yes, right? It's getting through the noise and getting through the clutter. And that's what LBS did.
Was it a tough choice to choose, like where you wanted to have or to do your MBA? Or was it something that you really knew it was London Business School?
I was a bit biased about it. I only applied to one school. For me, it was LBS or no one else. I don't recommend this as an application strategy to anyone interested in MBA. Please do multiple applications, have a safe school. Don't go all in on one school like me, but I think a part of me just knew that this is where I wanted to go. The global network was just so compelling. The quality of education was so high.
Oh, that's great to hear. So I also know that you built your first AI agent.
Yes.
Recently. Tell me about it.
So I've always loved playing with AI, and I wouldn't say this is my first sort of foray into it. Just for context for everyone listening, I am not technically trained in AI. I'm a chemical engineer, but we titrate chemicals and things like that. We aren't coding or building LLMs and any of that. So I'm just as non-technical as the average layperson when it comes to that sort of thing. But I've been really fortunate that over the years in my career, I've had opportunities to upskill in the tech department. So for example, when I was at Amazon, I got recertified at SQL. A year or two ago at work, I had an issue that I kept facing where I just didn't want to make PowerPoints anymore. And ChatGPT had just come out. So I figured, why can't I make my own ChatGPT that will make my PowerPoints for me? So I just did a couple of online courses, realized it's a lot easier than you're led to believe, and just made my own little GPT wrapper that did my PowerPoints for me. And most recently, I joined a live demo hosted by 9X. If anyone's interested, they host these free demos about every week and a half or 2 weeks, where they pick a new tool in the AI world and they really walk you through how to use it. And by the end of it, you come out with a workable live equipment, technology that you can use. So the last one I attended was hosted on N8N, which is an agent platform. And they taught us how to build an agent that would scrape multiple websites and it would alert you when there were changes. So putting it in a RevOps context, a lot of the times we're monitoring competitor websites to see changes to their product portfolio, changes to their pricing, because that way we need to adjust our pitch and our value props so that we're aligned with what the market's offering. So this agent does that scraping for me automatically. It tells me what's changed, it tells me what's the impact on it, and it tells me how would it impact my product portfolio and my sales team. So not only does it just pull the information, it adds that layer of analysis on top. And sometimes it just say they've expanded a product portfolio to include a product in the metaverse. This is really not something you need to worry about. You guys don't play in that. So it really does bring value added insights rather than just saying they've added this one product and leaving the last step to you. And so I'm really enjoying that.
So this brings me to a question, right? What was it like before this AI came into your life to help you with this task?
Well, I actually read a very interesting study, and it was published by MIT, that said 95% of the AI integrated by big enterprises tends to fail. And that's purely because people are in such a rush to implement AI that they're not really thinking of the long-term impact. They're not thinking of their digital roadmap and their strategy as a whole. They're doing AI to do AI. So if you think about it in actual terms, what I've done in this case is I've saved 20 minutes of time a week. Is this 20 minutes going to be what breaks the bank? Probably not. But if I was on a lean sales team and I was both the salesperson and the person doing my own ops, those 20 minutes would have made a big difference to me. And that's why I think these sort of really small, specific AI automations are so useful for smaller companies and scale-ups, because these are the guys that need those 20 minutes.
That's a great point, though, because a lot of people want to rush into AI, and there's, I guess, a lot of hype about AI as well. Since we're talking about small business, let's get into talking about RevOps. Of course, many listeners may not be familiar with it. So could you break it down for us, and exactly what is it and how is it differentiated from traditional sales or revenue generation functions?
That's a really good question. What I like to think about it is revenue operations is the nervous system of your revenue generating engine, right? It's aligning sales, marketing, and operations so everything works together. So it's not really about chasing more leads or adding headcount. It's about maximizing the impact of the resources you already have. And that's a really nice way to think about it. You're a small company. What you see a lot of the times is there's almost a disconnect, right? Your sales team is tracking your leads on WhatsApp. Your finance team is using Excel. And the founder really has no actual visibility. So you're missing out on follow-ups, and you're missing out on really understanding what your pipeline looks like. So based on that, people have to make decisions based on gut feel rather than data. So in a real life scenario, this might look like a founder putting money behind ads because they don't actually know which channel is converting customers for them. For example, offering discounts that don't actually serve your margin. So you see a big revenue increase, but you're not able to get that visibility to see your margin is actually getting diluted. And one thing that I've seen happen so much in smaller companies is that you see that you're making sales and you have one star salesperson. Unfortunately, the entire system is built around this one salesperson. So if that person was to ever leave the company, they were the only person that knew all the contacts. They were the person who had all the processes and the flows built in on their own computer and their own minds. So revenue operations essentially aligns people, processes, and tools in one direction.
Do you have any stories where implementing RevOps made a measurable difference to efficiency and margins?
Absolutely. So let's go with the first one, right? Where we spoke about how everything is just a bit disconnected. What a lot of people don't realize is that, when they hear disconnected thing, their first response is, well, yes, I need a CRM. I need Salesforce, and that's going to put us all on a central point of truth. Very true, not at all inaccurate, and frankly, Salesforce is a gorgeous tool. But when you're at that scale, a lot of the times you can't afford Salesforce. It is incredibly expensive, and it's geared toward enterprises. So when you're a small scale up, you need to be thinking, okay, what is the minimal viable tool that I can do to almost recreate the logic of a single source? So in one of the larger companies I was at, we decided to use HubSpot instead because they didn't have the budget for Salesforce, and HubSpot actually had some really good out-of-the-box integrations. The larger enterprises tend to prefer Salesforce, and I once consulted with a client where we said, actually, for where you're at I think an Excel sheet might be the best way for you to go until you've generated enough revenue to grow. So when you're at the point when you just have about 5 or 10 leads you're managing and you're really working at growing it, your single source of truth can just be as simple as an Excel sheet. And that's what's made the difference. When you have it all laid out in one place, you can see your pipeline, you can recognize where sales are not growing. So for example, about the spreadsheet, they realized that they were not getting a lot of meetings. When they were getting meetings, the meetings were not converting. So based on seeing the spreadsheet, he was able to understand that their ICP, their ideal customer profile, was actually off. They weren't targeting the right customers for their product. So based on that, the sales team and the marketing team got together. They redefined what an ideal customer for this product should look like. And accordingly, they were able to actually see increments within their pipeline. And all of this is because of a simple point of truth. And this could have applied on Salesforce, it could have applied on HubSpot, and it could have applied on an Excel, depending on the size and scale that you're at.
Interesting. So it doesn't always have to be, enterprise software. It doesn't always have to be something complicated or complex, right? It can just be an Excel.
Of course, everyone wants the best option, right? If you could afford it, I would always say go for the enterprise software. But a lot of the times, you simply can't, especially if you're in those very, very early stages. Sometimes it's investing in people or software. If you don't have a sales team, it doesn't matter how good your CRM is. Or if you don't have a marketeer, what difference does it make how your HubSpot is integrated? So sometimes you do need to prioritize. And I would always say prioritize people before tools. If you have good talent that is being coached, that is being given feedback in the right manner, that's incentivized in a way and have processes in place to support them, the tools are frankly the last part of it. So that's why I always say, if you can't see it, you can't scale it.
It's a really, really good point, which I really like. And I think that is very practical advice too for businesses, because with all, like I mentioned, right, with all this hype about AI and everyone wanting to get into some sort of software, AI-based software, they could be looking at the software piece first before the talent piece.
Yeah. And the software comes. A lot of the tools are much easier than you think. So for example, Zapier does a great job of putting in place these templates of automation that you can almost just download and build in by yourself. It is meant for self-service. It is so easy and intuitive to use. So clients started using Zapier for invoice reminders. So that way they were able to reduce late payments by about 40%. So small things like that, that's where you want to be using AI to help you. Find a real problem in your business and understand how AI is going to help you to resolve it, rather than saying, oh, I have AI, let me build my business around it.
I also saw that you wrote this, and I think this is connected to what we are talking about right now, which is you wrote that strategy powered by AI is where the shift happens. I would love to hear more about your perspective on this.
I think with the rise of ChatGPT, we have become a little more, I wouldn't say lazy, but I think complacent is the word. Every time we don't know how to solve a question at work, we plug it into ChatGPT and we take the answer as gospel. Now, I actually really love the approach of asking ChatGPT first, because it brings all those resources for you in one place. But the piece that tends to miss a lot of the time is critical thinking. I don't think AI has advanced to the point, at least as of today, where you should be copy-pasting an output and using it exactly as is. It still does require a bit of human context, a bit of cultural nuances and understanding. So a lot of strategy fails not because the tech or the advice isn't sound, but rather because of cultural barriers. So because people are in such a rush to implement these really, really nice suggestions that have come out from ChatGPT, they don't spend time focusing on the change management, the adoption, the stakeholder management required to actually bring the organization on board. And that's where I really see a good value unlock. If you can take that output from AI, and mold it within the context of your culture and change management, that's when you see the value unlock.
And people who are doing this, who should they be in the organization? Should it be like people who are using the AI, or should it be people who are pushing strategy forward? Because there are so many things that we can do with AI, but at the same time, when we get the answer, and like you said, a lot of people would just take it piecemeal and work with it or run with it. So if it's an organization, who should be the one really saying, look, let's do some thinking about this before we even implement anything suggested?
So ideally, I think everyone using AI should have that mindset, saying that, hey, if I'm asking ChatGPT to, tell me how to solve the strategic problem, they should be the people who have this mindset. But more realistic front, usually it's us in RevOps. So whoever is your ops representative in your function should be the one sort of guiding you on how to best leverage the outcome of these tools.
Okay, so it should be the RevOps person.
The RevOps person, in best case scenario, the person asking ChatGPT should be able to apply to it. But more often than not, I do see it falling to RevOps or FinOps, or really the ops person in that function who is responsible for embedding and scaling up the usage of these tools.
Say a business owner came to you today and said that, I want to improve my business and my margins. What are some practical strategies would you recommend that they start with?
I would first ask them about their visibility. You say you want to improve your margins. Do you actually have visibility beyond your top line and the bottom line? Do you know your customer acquisition costs value? What is your sales cycle time? What is your win rate? I would really ask them to spend time on their funnel metrics. Understand at which stage are you losing customers? And are you targeting the right kind of customers to get the margin you're looking for? So for example, when I was speaking to a client, we realized very quickly that she wasn't meeting her margin figures because the pricing model she was using was very much geared toward enterprises. But her customer profile was B2C. They were average customers who would be using the product off an app on the internet. And that's when we figured that this part of the model was what needed tweaking. So my first step to them would be get a very objective view of your data, and only then can you analyze it and see which part of your funnel is not serving you. And that's how you fix it.
So the first thing is you must get your data, and you must know your data and what's not working.
I always say that the fast way to increase profitability isn't just driving sales. It's stopping the revenue you already earn from slipping through those cracks and those inefficiencies in your cycle today. Most people say, I'm going to add a new channel. And so I always push them to say, well, are you actually making the most of the channels you already have?
So I would think that there will also be stopping the leakage, whatever that's leaking, whatever there is going out of your business without you even knowing about it.
Exactly. So I took a class on how to turn a struggling business around. And I think the principles very much apply here. The first thing to have you do is get a very objective, transparent view, and then stop the biggest leak. Sometimes stopping the biggest leak might be your short-term stopgap, like a little band-aid that you know isn't going to scale long-term, but you can't fix it if you're bleeding. So stop that leak and then put in place the systems to secure long growth. So let's say in that example, I had a customer consistently incurring losses. My first pull would be, guys, if this is the customer lifetime value and this is the customer acquisition cost, is this customer one you want to keep? And that's a very difficult conversation to have, because getting a new customer, frankly, costs a lot more than retaining an existing one. But if your existing customer isn't someone you're able to upsell, they're not growing in the way you need them to, they're not paying your invoices, then is that a customer that fits the profile of the product you're selling? And so these are the type of questions you'd be asking them.
That's a hard one for the business owner to just think about. Do we want to get rid of this person or this company that's not making us money?
Yeah, it's a hard call, right? Because every piece of business is so hard earned. But if you're earning it at a loss, is it actually helping you? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's yes. We need to make inroads in this industry. And the only way to do that is through the investment of blah, blah, blah. But if you don't have the data, you don't know this and you're not able to track it. And, you could say, okay, you know what? I hear what you're saying. Let's put a cap on the amount of loss we think is fair to incur as an investment into this, and after which we do expect to see returns. So when you have it laid out as a transparent way in a central single point of truth, you're able to make these decisions and have these conversations by taking the emotion out of it.
So your advice is to just give yourself a time frame.
Yes, give yourself a target.
To how long?
Exactly. Not even a time frame as much as a metric. Hold yourself accountable to some metric, which is why a lot of the times they say a salesperson cannot do the role of a sales operations person. You cannot be both the carrot and the stick. Because if you're the person that's worked so hard to bring this deal here, you're not going to be the guy that turns around and says, actually, profitability is really low. The customer lifetime value is so low compared to the cost of acquiring this customer. I'm going to drop it now that we're at signing stage. You're not going to be that guy. And so having this data really helps detach the emotion from it, and having a separate dedicated rev ops or sales ops person who is keeping an eye on these for you, and they're able to alert you ideally before it reaches that stage, is what really helps drive these companies.
Yeah, because there's too much of emotion invested by the salesperson into this customer.
Exactly. And many life sales cycles are 9 months to a year. You've spent a sizable amount of time and effort securing meetings, nurturing a relationship, demoing the products, a lot of the times doing a POC within their frame or like a little sandbox. So you spent a lot of time. I can understand a salesperson not wanting to take that call. So it's really useful to have a set of metrics you hold yourself to, or a person who will hold you accountable when you're chasing revenue rather than margin.
Let's say that particular business owner says, great, I love your advice and I'm going to just get some visibility on what you advise me on. And then what? Then from there, is it easier for me to actually look at my next step based on the data that I have?
You can diagnose where you want to see growth. So for example, let's say that the business owner just knew he wasn't closing enough deals. He had the data and he realized that actually they're generating more than enough leads. But what was happening is after the leads were generated and they were meeting the sale, it wasn't converting to the next stage. So what that means to the business owner is that if these leads were good, we have the right product, this should have worked. Why didn't it? At this point, this gives the business owner a really good point of narrowing it down and saying, I need to understand what goes wrong between when the customer is interested and the end of this phone call. So at this point, the business owner can say, hey, I'm going to implement a tool like Gong that will analyze and record these calls and will give salespeople insights in real time that will help them coach and navigate the objections coming toward them. A business owner might also say, okay, you know what? I think the tools you're using to present to the customer aren't compelling. The pitch deck you're using is simply not geared toward this customer. They're not seeing the ROI they could gain. Let's make our pitch deck more customer-centric and more value-oriented rather than talking about the features of the product as much. Or another customer I noticed realized that their time they were showing the demo of the product was too short. So we played with the idea of just increasing the length of the demo to about double the time. And that actually really helped, because the more hands-on and more tactical a potential customer can be with the product, the more likely they are to convert. And so that's what really helps. When you know where to focus, you can drill in and you can try different things. And best thing is you can track it with data so you immediately know what works and what doesn't.
And now that we know how to go about doing it, I'm sure you've seen a lot of mistakes that business owners have made. What are some that come to your mind?
I think a lot of the times people forget sales is a personable position. You do need to have face time with the client. And as remote and disconnected as the world has become, sometimes FaceTime is as simple as picking up the phone and talking to a client. So a very interesting study came out of a company in the States where they said reps that have one point of contact, like of actual voice or video or in person, like a real conversation with a customer, are much more likely to drive conversion. And this isn't something that's going to be fixed with a tool. In fact, this is very much the opposite direction of it. This is saying, if you want someone to trust you with an enterprise-grade contract valued at millions of dollars, they're going to have to spend time with you. You're going to have to show them that you really have the solution to the problem they're facing. And the only way you can do that is by spending time with them and showing them that you really understand the problem. And that way you're able to position your product as the ideal solution.
Which brings us back to the fact that we all have to be human, right?
Absolutely.
Whether we're selling or marketing, it doesn't matter what, but any relationship starts with being human. Like, you have to show up first. You have to show who you are. Otherwise, I can't spend money with you, right? I can't buy your stuff.
Absolutely. I think that's the part that gets most ignored. And I always say it's got to be people, process, tools. And I've been having a lot of calls with fellow colleagues in this space. And you'd be surprised the number of times I've heard the same phrase packaged in different words, or often even the same words. This is almost a mantra in the RevOps field. It has to start with people. Everything else needs to follow after.
It's also a great reminder for all of us who think that more AI is the answer. More AI is not the answer.
AI helps, don't get me wrong, but automate the places where you see value. And a good rule of thumb I like to give people is, with where AI is currently, treat AI the way you would treat an intern. Would you let an intern run point on a $1 million account? Probably not. And that's how you should be working with AI. Delegate the tasks where you genuinely don't think you doing it manually will add value. That's why I really love the automations that you're seeing right now on Zapier, N8N, and Make. I think they're so powerful because they've actually identified what are these points of slippage where reps don't need to be spending this much time. That, something just for context for people who don't know. When you fill in a form on a CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce, it asks you for a lot of information. What is your name of your contact? What is the company? What is the website of the company? And a lot of the times, reps spend time Googling, okay, what is the website? Copy it, paste it, A good enrichment tool will say, okay, you had a meeting with this guy at this time. Meeting went well. I'm going to take this data, create an entry for you in your Salesforce or your CRM, and I will Google whatever I need to. I will pull the website for you. I will pull all this information. And the really good tools will be like, hey, I see you have a meeting at 3 p.m. Let me give you a quick brief about the person you're meeting and what is a problem I think they're facing in this company based on news that I've read about the company in this region. So that's where you can use AI to help you, right? The background work you would delegate to an intern so that you can focus on the meeting. You can focus on being more human and more present.
It's a really good use case for treating AI like an intern, like a research assistant.
Yeah.
Like someone who helps you get all your research done. But then you're the one who has to show up and talk to the customer, talk to the person in front of you.
Exactly. AI can give you the best cheat sheet ever. But if you deliver it like ChatGPT with the M dashes and everything, you're not going to compel anyone to trust you.
What else did I have not yet covered in this aspect of business that you want to talk about?
Because there's so many new AI tools, a new role has been created called a GTM Engineer, whose actual job it is to optimize your tech stack. So you have a super AI-powered tech stack, often powered by Clay, because they're the ones that have really gone very hard on this trend. But I've seen it sort of ripple across the industry. So if you are looking for someone to really optimize your tech stack for you, and you've heard all this and you're like, yeah, but I just want a really AI-powered thing, find yourself a GTM engineer. They're all over the place now. It is a very new space and it's seeing a lot of growth. These are the guys who are meant to really understand how to optimize your tech stack and how to use products like Clay to the fullest and maximum potential that they can be.
The new jobs are literally created.
Yeah, everyone
because of this technology.
Yeah, everyone keeps talking about how AI is going to take your job, and you know what? One day it very well might. I can't say yes or no to that, but I can say it is very tangibly also creating roles that simply didn't exist before.
Now I want to switch tracks a little bit and ask you a little bit about the things that you do in your life outside of business.
Oh, that's
So beyond your corporate leadership roles, you've also built a strong personal brand and mentor women and experiment with so many AI tools or emerging tech that's coming up. So talk to me a little bit about where you're going with all this and what drives you personally.
That's such an insightful question. So I think what's always driven me is the spirit of growth mindset. And to me, that manifests itself as saying, hey, there's something new out there. I want to learn how it works. Or, oh my gosh, I have a problem. I don't know how to deal with it. Let me find a solution. I've always been very against complaining. If I have a problem, I know there's a solution out there somewhere. A lot of the times, the solution can be found by, as I said earlier, asking ChatGPT. A lot of the times, it is by teaching yourself how to use a tool. For example, in one of my earlier roles, I wanted to launch new AI tool, and the tech team was very against it. And they kept explaining it to me, but I really couldn't understand. So I taught myself SQL. They had a couple of internal resources. And then I went back to the product team and I said, okay, I actually understand what you've been saying to me all this time now. But what you don't know is I can actually get you the resources now to fix this. So I think just taking that extra step to learn is so powerful for me, which is why you'll always see me playing with new technologies, trying to find ways to simplify points of friction in my own life. And on the same thread, I think a really great pathway for learning is speaking to people who've walked the path before you. The good news is, whatever it is you're doing, you're probably not the first person navigating this problem. So I love the idea of having a big community, and I love speaking to like-minded peers, talking about the issues we're facing, because no matter if I'm speaking to someone in America or Singapore or the UK, we all seem to be having the same problems. And so I love the mindset of coming together to collectively find a solution. And I've been so fortunate that I've had mentors and leaders and peers who've been able to help me when I needed help, that I always just want to pay it forward. So when it comes to helping women break into tech, I've always been very keen on saying, I want to be there. I've been helped by so many people in my career. It is my duty and my honor to pay it forward. And so that's really how that all ties in together.
What is it about women in tech that you feel right now that needs that push, that needs someone to really open doors and make things more accessible for women? Because I know you mentioned in your LinkedIn post that sometimes you're the only women in the room.
Yeah.
Is that still happening?
Very much so. I think it might be a function of the geographies I predominantly operate in, where they just simply be a little more male dominant, or the fact that I do work in the tech space and very much in ops, which is again, more male dominated fields. I do see that a lot of the time I'm the only woman at the table. And I've been in situations where, I say something and people act like I didn't speak, and the man sitting next to me has to repeat it and suddenly like, oh, that's a great idea. And it's a common thing you've heard of before. It's called sunflowering. And it was so surreal to me to experience that happen in real time once. I almost did a double take thinking, oh, is there a hidden camera here? So as a woman, I think the best thing we can do is send the elevator down, right? When I see a woman trying to break into tech, showing even the slightest bit of interest in it, I will offer whatever resources I can, get her whatever meetings I can, if it means one more woman will be at that table. Because we bring in a very diverse perspective. There's a reason that female CEOs tend to be much more successful than their male counterparts. And that's not to say we're better or worse. It just means we bring a different opinion that simply wasn't considered earlier. So I love the idea, talking to women early in their careers and giving them the push they need to go sit in that room with only guys in it.
I'd like to know, on a personal basis, right, Sonam, where do you get your confidence? I mean, not just confidence in the boardroom or confidence, talking to people about tech stuff, but confidence. How do you build confidence as a woman today?
I think it comes on two fronts, right? I've always had this mindset of I want to learn. So I do approach situations where I'm not fully confident with that sense of humility. So I'm more than happy to say, hey, I don't know this. I'm not the expert, but you know what? I'm more than willing to learn whatever I need to. So at the end of this conversation, I will be one. So that sense of humility really does empower you because you're not there being set up to fail, right? You're there to learn. So that really lowers the barrier of intimidation. And then you can be much more comfortable and be yourself when having a conversation because it just reduces the stakes. That a lot of the times I do realize that women are much less likely to apply for a role where they are more qualified than their male counterparts. So sometimes I want to tell the people that I'm mentoring, you need to believe in yourself a little bit. I'm not saying fake it till you make it, although that is great advice in certain contexts. But a lot of the times, be cognizant of what you bring to the table. And you can only do that by fairly evaluating yourself, understanding what your strengths and your weaknesses are. So I actually recommend a lot of women that I mentor to go ahead and do a step analysis or an enneagram, any of those sort of psychometric testings that will tell you very qualitatively what are your strengths, and that way play to your advantage. You're always going to be confident if you're playing to something you know you excel at. So my work in this is convincing them that they do excel at this. It's a bit of humility and a lot of self-reflection, knowing what I'm good at. So I'm probably not going to be giving a talk on financial modeling because I know I'm not the expert on that. But when it comes to self-improvement, I'm happy to do that any day of the week because I've walked the walk and I know that I have.
Is it true that women need to have experienced something in order to be able to be confident in it? If I haven't done it, I wouldn't feel like I can confidently talk about it or do work in it. What are your thoughts about this?
I think yes and no, right? If you've not done it, you probably shouldn't be going on panels or podcasts talking about it. So there's fake it till you make it. And then there's also just recognizing that sometimes you don't have the experience required to speak about this in a compelling manner. And there's nothing you can say that's going to add value to a listener. Fair play. But on the flip side, going for a job is very different. These are things you can learn. If you don't feel like you know enough to go for this job, be really harsh with yourself. Ask yourself, what exactly is it that I feel I do not know from doing this job? Is it that I've never done delivery in a live environment? Is it that I don't have experience speaking to C-suite members? Understand what part of it is giving you pause rather than getting intimidated by the entire role as a whole concept. And then it becomes a lot easier to fix, right? If your issue is you've never done delivery in a live environment, well, now you can reach out to people. You can reach out to people in your own company and say, hey, I want to learn more about this. Can I come shadow you? You can also reach out to mentors and other leaders in the space who don't necessarily work where you do and say, I'm really interested in learning more about this. Are there any resources you could direct me toward? So I do think a lot of this times, if you're feeling a little lack of confidence in a certain space, and it is because you know you tangibly do not meet a requirement, there's a lot you can do to fill that gap. And I can 100% assure you, someone else is seeing that line and being like, I'll figure it out on the job, and applying anyways. So take that bet on yourself. Put in the effort to learn what you don't and apply anyways. You'll never know if you don't try.
Good point. And I really second that. So what lessons can women in Asia, especially those in traditional industries, can take from your path when it comes to embracing change and carving out new opportunities?
I think take the risk. A lot of the times, what you're doing may not make sense to the outside world. I know when I left supply chain and I moved into tech, a lot of people were just so confused by it. They said, you're going to throw away half a decade worth of growth and experience. You've never worked in tech. What qualifies you to go to Amazon right now? Understand that whatever work you've done is not wasted. You've built transferable skills that any employer would be lucky to have. So don't diminish your own value. As even when you think that you have nothing to bring to the table, I guarantee you there is something there. So look for the something, because there always is.
What was your something? If I may ask.
My something was twofold. I've always had an understanding of operations, whether that was supply chain operations, sales operations. I've always been the person that was able to take complex data and pull the story out of it. So that's a skill that it's completely agnostic to industry or function. It is a valuable skill. And I think the part that comes through even stronger is that I've always been the person in different companies that galvanizes cross-functional communication. I've taught courses on how to manage stakeholders across different functions. And that gives me a superpower that very few people had in the roles I was applying for. So I was really able to stand out from this, saying, okay, you know what? I may not have learned XYZ or done it traditionally in the past, but this is what I can actually bring to this role that I can tell you your other candidates do not. So lean in to the differences you bring. A lot of the times people are ashamed of it. I would say that is what makes you unique.
That's why you're where you are right now.
I'm very fortunate that I've had people who are always listening. And I always come back to that. If you can get in the room to make your case, people are much more willing to help you. So it's really about leveraging your network and making the most of those opportunities. And when you have that face time, make sure you own it. Make sure you're proud of the things you've done and you're able to talk about it in a way that the person sitting in front of you comes out saying, you know what, this person can add value to my business.
So if you had to leave our audience with one piece of advice about approaching RevOps with confidence, what would it be?
Good question. I think it would have to be that growth doesn't always mean doing more. It means doing better with what you already have.
So where can people find you if they want to connect with you, Sonam?
LinkedIn is great. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Feel free to drop me a connect and I'd be happy to jump on calls with any women who are trying to break into tech. I'm here. Let me help you out.
What aha moments did you gain from Sonam's journey today? Her story shows that you can make bold moves, stay sharp, and focus on driving decisions using data. Sonam's emphasis on a single source of truth, practical AI usage, and focusing on margin over volume offers a clear path for many businesses. As you reflect, consider where could you tighten leakage in your own business this week? If you're new to Womenpreneur Asia, subscribe so you won't miss more inspiring stories like Sonam's. And for our loyal listeners, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram for more insights. And do check out womenpreneurasia.com to learn about my programs, such as From Vision to Voice, as well as take part in our weekly Visibility Challenge. This is Krista signing off, and I will see you next week for another brand new episode of Womenpreneur Asia.